Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. And today our guest is Steve Pasin. How you doing, Steve?
Good, great. How are you?
I'm good. So you wrote this book, Taming the Fetal Tyrant. I find it interesting, but before I dive into questions about it and sort of your theories, I wanted to make sure that we have the nomenclature, the definition of some of the things correct, so everybody's on the same page. So how do you define megalomania?
Everything revolves around you.
Is that the same as a narcissist?
A degree of it, probably a narcissist. It's the same thing, but I'm coming from the point of view that megalomania is the purest form of narcissism that you can get.
So you discuss a lot about this notion of megalomania beginning in the womb and when the fetus perceives itself as the ruler of the universe. So I'm curious how you sort of arrived at this theory. Is it based on a certain concept? Is it from psychology? Is it neuroscience? Or is it just a theory that you had and then you started working towards proving that theory?
It started out, I was talking to a psychologist many decades, and he brought up that term of megalomania. And so I ran with it because it seemed like the proper definition of what the human nature is. So what happens is that I added to it because psychologists don't like that idea that there is a fetal psychology at all. And yet, if the human nature comes out of a fetal development, we are clearly not megalomaniacs, pure and simple, on this planet, but we come from that. And what we've become is a megalomaniacal dilution performed by culture. And that leaves us with the human nature, you ready for this? To win, control, dominate, and be right. And I think you can see the relationship between winning, controlling, dominating, and being right, and a megalomania. The best thing that I can use over the top example of megalomania would be Adolf Hitler. But then you have Jeffrey Dahmer, and you have even in this political world we live in, Democrats think Trump is a megalomaniac. But it's just a thought. Is there a proof to it? If we're all megalomaniacs from the womb, how could even the accuser not be a megalomaniac?
Yeah, and that's why I was trying to, create the definition first, so we can align to that, because some of the examples you just gave, also not being a medical professional, not being a psychologist, psychiatrist, just a student of all that stuff, but they would say that they were also sociopaths, right? So there's a diagnosis that if you're acting on the impulses that you have, you're also, you can be a psychopath, you can be a sociopath. So is there a definitive line between those several things, or is it all the same?
I think psychologists make it artificial, the line. I think it all comes from the basic life support system that develops in the womb. If you're not a megalomaniac, you don't get to survive postpartum.
So do you eventually outgrow this, or is there an inherent kind of megalomania that's inside all of us that we suppress?
The culture looks to suppress it, so it doesn't have Adolf Hitler's running around all throughout its culture. That's where the individuals who already got into the culture, your parents, grandparents, it takes a village type of, mentality. They have to strip that megalomania from you so that you can fit into the society as a productive citizen. Otherwise, somebody might assassinate you.
I think I understand this this ingrained kind of biological need to survive. So we understand that, and that's our evolution from the womb to, being a child, and especially when we evolve, like animals say, they leave their young, and you have to fend for yourself, and you have to watch out for predators, all that stuff. But now in society, there are parts of that. But now in society, as you mentioned, society sort of frowns on it and modifies, people's behavior so they can sort of, not, I guess, not connect to their true essence because it's not in the best interest of society. But there are people, I mean, I'm sure you've met people that are so focused on empathy. They're so into what can I do for other people. So is that that they shed their megalomania completely, or they're suppressing it that way?
You can't suppress it completely.
Mhm.
The human nature is instinctual. That means you must perform it. Like a bird must fly, a fish must swim. It's ingrained. I believe it is ingrained. You ready for this one? Epigenetically.
Yeah, I'm going to jump into that for a second
Then I,
because
wo-
that's my
then I
that's
won't
my
go.
background, genetics and epigenetics. But before I want to talk about your origin story and sort of how you grew up and how you got to where you are with these theories. So where did you grow up?
Brooklyn, New York.
And childhood, were your do you have parents that were together? Do you have siblings?
I have two brothers. Uh, my parents got divorced when I was 31 years old. It was a very big shock to my mother because my father took her rejection of his mother's broken hip. She didn't want her to live, in the condo, and so he took that as a withdrawal of love, which is another concept altogether. Don't forget, we should talk about what love is for a megalomaniac.
Yeah, I'm super curious. So, as a kid, what part of Brooklyn did you grow up in?
Well, my father moved around a bunch. The last place we lived was Mill Basin.
Okay, Mel Basin. Yeah, it's
I commuted, I think a number of transportation facilities to get from the house to LIU downtown Brooklyn, which is
yeah,
where I graduated.
got it. Yeah, I have family that lived in that area, and also Flatbush Avenue U,
You
etc.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm from Philly, but I live in
Uh-huh.
LA. So my family lives in New York. But as a kid, were you into sports? Were you into math? Like, what kind of kid were you?
Very much into sports, derived probably from my father, epigenetically, maybe. My descendants, my grandchildren are very much into sports. I started out as in football in high school. My parents made me quit because I developed a concussion, and then I went onto the track team to throw shot put. So I'm immersed in athletics.
So was there like, did you have a mindset of this is something that this is what I want to do when I grow up? I want to be a fireman. I want to be a professional athlete, or what were you? Yeah, what idea concept did you have for yourself?
Hey everyone. So, does anybody know what greening out means? I've been the recipient of so many calls over the years of people greening out. That means they took too much THC and had an adverse reaction. So, I always recommend other things, but nothing really concrete. Now, I can. There's a solution. It is called Antidose. Antidose.com is quick, it's rapid, it works immediately, safe, and effective. So I love my props. if you are toasty or you are burnt, that's the difference. Now, I also love the 1 gummy, 2 gummy, 3 gummy floor. So just be aware, very narrow therapeutic window. You know exactly what you can take now if you've taken too much. Once again, it's Antidose at antidose.com. Get yours today.
It's interesting you asked that question. I've had a little bit of a workout with classmates, where you can go and check out your high school yearbook and people and stuff like that. So I posted my picture, and I looked at what I signed into my profile, on my yearbook, and it said I wanted to be, you ready for this, a research scientist.
Oh,
I was interested in biology.
Yeah.
I turned out I won. Are you familiar with the Westinghouse Science?
you still there, Steve? I'm losing you.
Hello?
Yeah.
I lost your picture. Hey, there you go.
All right. Say that again. We'll edit that out. Westinghouse, and you broke up.
Yeah, the Westinghouse Science Award. So I was always interested in science. In college, I was a biology major. Didn't do very well because I wasn't ready for it emotionally, the transition from high school to college. So the first 2 years, in the first year, I dropped out of biology, became a physical education major as a result of my athletics. And then I looked at it and I said, you know what? I chose physical education was there because I liked the science that was in it. We actually dissected the fetal cat.
Yeah.
In biology. But it was too easy. I guess I was maturing, nicely. And so I switched back to being a biology major. And my next year, my junior year, I got 4 A's and 2 B's. The 2 B's were in physics, and everything else that I took in science, which was biology, chemistry, and physics. Also, what was it? A speech course, something like that. But I got 4 A's and 2 B's. That got me into dental school that year. So I made up all the lost time that I wasn't mature enough, to spend with my nose to the grindstone. Out of college, I made dental school and went there and learned about the medicine. And I drifted into mind-body medicine.
So, was there a certain moment that happened in your life where you said, okay, I have this need to write this book?
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. Don't let me forget what happened to me at 5 years old, because in looking backwards into coming up with all this information, I actually had an epigenetic experience. And so I extrapolate that into the book for everybody on the planet, because that's my definition of truth. If something is the truth, it has to be proven scientifically, and it therefore must be true for every single person on the planet. Otherwise, all you have is an opinion, which the thesaurus defines as a bias, prejudice, and a faith. I am not into those 4 words. I couldn't treat patients that way.
So what was that moment?
Well, that was 5 years old, but at 5 years old, I didn't understand where I was going.
No, not the 5-year-old. We'll get back to that. The 5-year-old,
the 10-year-old, 5 years later, the 10-year-old was observing a fight that my parents had with friends in the home. My father was a compulsive gambler, so he had like intervention groups, to help other compulsive gamblers out at the house. And I noticed at 10 years old, every single person who was in the discussion felt that they were right. Everyone. And I said to myself at 10 years old, that can't be. How could they all be right? And I believe that put me on the path to what truth is, because something that is true has to be true for everybody. They all could be right.
Yeah. Why can't everybody be right? Because they're entitled to their own opinion. and you're not
They-
going to be able to change anybody's mind. They feel they're right, so they're right.
And where does it come from?
It comes from the megalomania side of you that has developed from your from the womb, correct?
Yes, yes. And the culture, remember, strips away the raw Hitler type of megalomania
Right.
into high-powered business people, high-powered politicians, high-powered anybody, any particular profession, doesn't matter what it is. And then you have to fit in and contribute to society. That's where you get to win, control, dominate, and be right. There's nothing that you can do in life that doesn't get filtered through the human nature, which is to win, control, dominate, and be right in whatever you decide to do.
So
Anything.
this notion of taming, right? Taming your
Yep.
fetal tyrant, that's part of it. But do certain people tame it differently than others? There's not a universal taming, and we'll talk about genetics and epigenetics and things in nature that can turn on your expression. But in a general sense, because society has pressures, there's psychological pressures, there's familiar pressures, all these different things to be able to suppress or tame, as you're saying. But you just mentioned a bunch of people, Elon Musk, like they have this notion of the taming of that tyrant is actually frowned upon because you want to express it, because that expression of it actually creates power, money, dominance, all those other things. So we actually see that there's a fine line between like that type of Elon Musk character to a Hitler character that you mentioned. And I wanted to understand, is that a societal? Is that epigenetic? Is that you're familiar? Is that everybody across the board? How do you know where the limit is for that tipping point?
You don't know. That's where life is untamed, if you will. You're going to put your nose into things. It's going to get bloodied or not. You're going to learn from the experience, just like all animals learn from their experiences in their venues. We use educational processes to do that. We teach kids how to behave in school, what to say, what not to say, and then parents, say, don't yell, don't scream, don't kick, be nice, treat others as you would have them treat you. All of that kind of stuff tames the fetal tyrant. It's all cultural.
So by
the way, in every culture, Rome, Greece, doesn't matter. Every culture has done the same thing to control its fetal tyrants.
So people who give their life to, I don't know, religion, let's say, or people who give their life to other people healing, I don't know, like a Mother Teresa type of individual. How did they tame their tyrant versus, other people, or did they have a different epigenetic or genetic predisposition to that? I lost you again, Steve.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get back on.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can't see your. I can hear you. I can't see your.
That's all right. You don't have to see me. I love you anyway. I love that you brought that up, because in my book, I discuss this as the juxtaposition between Terry and Addie, Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler.
Mhm.
Do they both have the same human nature? They're both human.
Mhm.
Do they have the same human nature? Or are there 8 billion different human natures for the 8 billion people on the planet?
Mhm.
They both have the same human nature, which is to win, control, dominate, and be right. And in the living of life, each one of us chooses which avenue to win, control, dominate, and be right within. So Mother Teresa decided the best way for her to win, control, dominate, and be right with her human nature. Now, she didn't know she had that human nature, but she just picked. We okay?
Well, I really
Okay.
need your video on because we're
No,
recording for YouTube
yeah.
as well, if it works.
Oh,
Give it a
all
shot.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mother Teresa, to win, control, dominate, and be right, decided God would be the closest way to win, control, dominate, and be right, because that would be the ultimate. Hitler, on the other hand, went through World War I, was very much traumatized, hated what happened to Germany, during the Treaty of Versailles, and he came out thinking, well, not only, and I was just writing as you from waiting for you to get on with me, I was writing about how many times Hitler was attempted to be assassinated. It was about 14 times. And do you know what he came up with from a spiritual point of view? Just to show you how ubiquitous and almost nonsensical this is. He came up with the idea that he had the Aryan master race. Everybody else should die. And that's how he wanted to win, control, dominate, and be right. We choose this kind of stuff. We don't know what we're doing when we do it. We just want to win, control, dominate, and be right, which comes out of the megalomania. And that's what Hitler did. So you see, Hitler and Mother Teresa had the same human nature. They just chose different paths to express it.
Yes, Steve, see if you can get your video back on, because I want to dive into this a little bit more, but let's see how it works with your connection.
Okay, how about now?
Okay. So I just along those lines, I know a little bit about genetics, and people have genetic predispositions to certain things. And, 99.9% of us are the same. It's that 0.1% that makes us different. And then the lifestyle choices that we make, as you discussed, epigenetics, that turn the switches on and off. So I would argue from a scientific standpoint that perhaps somebody like a Hitler versus a Mother Teresa maybe had different genetic predispositions. Perhaps Hitler had a predisposition to PTSD and stress reactivity, and then, being in World War I and some of the trauma that he, quote unquote, suffered, turned on those epigenetic markers. And maybe Mother Teresa didn't have those same markers. Maybe she has some other markers. Would that be a difference in genetic and epigenetic expression for those individuals?
Mm-hmm. That's a perfect understanding of nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
Nurture comes from your culture. You pick and choose what avenue you want to proceed on culturally, what your culture allows you to do. And the genetics, either you have the ability or you don't. If Hitler was not prone to being a great orator, he probably would have been Hitler. He would have been a failed artist, something like that.
Yeah.
And Mother Teresa, she just believed, and I come from the point of view that every thought you have gets translated epigenetically. So if you feel that you have the inside track to God, like a Mother Teresa, well, you're going to create the chemistry for that, which would be, let's say, dopamines and serotonin, and oxytocin, all this to bond with God and feel good about it. Hitler would never produce that. He would produce other chemicals, primarily cortisol and adrenaline. And each of those chemicals for the two different people would cause the genetic material to be expressed differently.
Yeah. You're 100% right on that. I really wanted people to stress. I'm gonna try to unpack this a little bit more, but I would really want people to understand, because you're saying something very, very, very important, and I want people to understand that your own neurochemistry can help determine the epigenetic expression that you're genetically predisposed to. And I always tell people, like, your own genetic, your genome is your own personal GPS unit of life. Like, if you know this about yourself, where your potholes are in your own personal road. However, when you are, driving blindly without your GPS, you're turning on different things based on lifestyle choices. And you're absolutely correct. That neurochemistry can actually help to control the expression of your genetic predispositions. Is there anything that somebody can do, to be able to guide themselves, and when they see, their own sharp corners out there, that they're aware, self-aware? Is there anything they can do to mitigate that possible expression of your epigenetics that you're predisposed to?
That's why I wrote the book, to acquaint people with what human nature is that everyone on the planet possesses. If you don't know what the human nature is, you're not going to understand that everything that you think, everything that you experience, which is a survival episode in your life, must be filtered through, how am I going to navigate this episode in life to win, control, dominate, and be right? If you don't know who you are, you will continue bumping into the walls of life, thinking all of your decisions come from some other entity. They only come from you. And if you don't know who you are, you're in trouble, which is why we're in trouble.
So are we self-sabotaging based on like cultural stressors and trying to conform? So we're trying to suppress what's naturally part of us, and in that way we're damaging ourselves
to some degree, but that's where the culture comes back. We're always going to try and teach the young ones not to sabotage themselves, and they have to make those kinds of choices. I don't know who did it for Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler, but somebody did. And by the way, if you don't have, when we're talking about genetic predisposition, if you don't have certain, let's say, cultural innuendos in your life, you can't express those genes. Those genes will not be They will not form the chemistry that they're coded to code for. In dentistry, I came to realize that if the human condition prevented sugar from being around in people's lives, then the amount of tooth decay that would develop would be tremendously less. There might some, should be there. Other animals don't eat sugar, and they get some degrees of cavities, but not the rampancy that we see in the human condition. Eliminate sugar, guess what? No more genetic predisposition. Eliminate the way you see life in the way of stress, which I say is anything that you see is wrong. That comes from your culture. Your culture teaches you what is right and what is wrong. No, if you don't have stress in your life, no sense of wrongness, you don't get cortisol produced for the stress. You don't have to consider fight or flight and the production of adrenaline along with the cortisol, which then affects, your entire body metabolically. You get metabolic syndrome, you can get cancers. It's a very intricate play that people have absolutely no understanding about. And in the last years of my life, I decided to write a book about it. Because that book was coming, for 60 years. Wow. It was always an interest of mine. But when the capstone for me was epigenetics. I was looking for how a thought can be translated into a biological molecule into your body that has physiologic effects. I've always been fascinated by that concept. And that's where epigenetics came in, and also quantum physics.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the work like people like Dr. Joe Dispenza talk about as well. And, there's been a lot of science that proved about, vibrational energy and frequency, and being able to connect your thoughts to epigenetic expressions. And I agree with you on stress. And I was wondering about these societal beliefs, because even societal beliefs evolve and change over time, right? So we may think the bathing suit, the bikini, oh my God, don't women are half naked and are wearing like dresses, And now we have like a little, a little thong, and then that's fine. So even societal beliefs evolve and change. So if you're conforming to example of societal beliefs, how that does that evolution, could that be harming us in some way?
I'm sorry, my phone was getting warm, and when it gets warm, it does this.
No problem.
So, just encapsulate the last part of what you were saying, so I can maybe respond to it.
Yeah, I was talking about societal beliefs as they change over time, and you mentioned that societal beliefs will help us to modify this notion of this fetal tyrant. But because societal beliefs change over time and evolve, does our megalomania, fetal tyrant, does that evolve over time to align with societal beliefs?
No, I believe that's epigenetically set. And I believe it was epigenetically set from the first cell that ever was constructed on this planet. Because it needed a way to survive, and epigenetically, it developed the way to survive, and it passed it down to all other descendants because it was such a vital way of survival. And here we have it today in us.
I guess
That's transgenerational. See, that's transgenerational.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with this. The question. So for instance, there was a study done many years ago on survivors of children of Holocaust survivors, and one
How
of the
about
things.
the Dutch famine?
Yeah.
The Dutch famine? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, so the descendants of the Nazis decided that they needed more food for their country and their soldiers, so they decided to take it out of the mouths of conquered countries. And in this particular case, the Danes, the Dutch, were the victims of it. And so those people, the Dutch, became famine victims. That turns out to be studied generations later in the offspring that had a problem with obesity.
Yeah.
So they held on to whatever nutrients they could have. The obesity was also probably related to metabolic syndrome, but it all came from the ancestors who went through the famine.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense, and it's science. This is not conjecture. This is not make believe where people can turn around and say, "Well, that's your opinion." I'm sorry, that's not my opinion, my bias, my prejudice, and my faith. That's a scientific fact. I didn't make it up. That's where you have to intervene with cultures. You have to get them to understand that their nonsense is nonsense.
But I guess if you have this belief that natural human beings, like this is inherent in us from birth, that we are power hungry, competitive, and when society imposes on us behavior to suppress that, isn't that what we're suppressing going to show up in different ways, in disease and other things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Remember, stress is I've redefined stress. Stress is so far beyond Hans Selye with the general adaptation syndrome. In reality, we live with stress being anything that we judge to be wrong. Wrong, if you'll understand, is the antithesis of the last part of the human nature, which is to win, control, dominate, and be right. The opposite of right is wrong. Wrong equals stress. It makes so much sense. And from my point of view, no one has ever put that together.
Is that the only way that people develop stress? Because if, let's say, just as an example, let's say somebody has some stress around public speaking, and for some reason they have to go up on stage and they have to say a speech, or they're at a wedding and they have to give a speech and they have this stress. What are they? Is there a fear of being wrong? Is that what's causing stress?
Fear of being judged. Megalomaniacs do not like to be judged. They're right from the very beginning. So there are vestiges of the womb which come to the stage when you got to talk. Even taking a test. Somebody's going to judge me wrong. Maybe I'll look stupid. Now we have stress being defined. You ready for this? I know you'll love this. Stress is now defined by science as being social defeat.
Interesting.
Now, when you look at it from that point of view, it makes perfect sense again that whenever a megalomaniac or a person who has very sensitive, winning, controlling, dominating, and righteous attitudes, whenever they experience social defeat, they produce an awful lot of cortisol, an awful lot of adrenaline, and they start to get sick. From social defeat. I'll give you another little thing, which you may or may not know, but because I appreciate that you're into epigenetics. Epigenetics did a study on social economic status. Status turns out to be a high-powered concept of epigenetics. Whenever your status is impinged upon, you have an epigenetic event. Now you take a look at the social structure of this country with immigrants, with blacks, Latinos, anybody who's coming in, they have undercurrents of social status reduction. And they don't like it. Those thoughts will create the chemistry in their bodies for the metabolic syndrome. And you see an awful lot of people have the belly tire around their waist, which is like a marker for the stress that they're going through from a status point of view. All of this is documented.
But doesn't I'm an immigrant, for instance, and I wasn't born here. I was born in Lithuania, but I came over as a kid. My parents came to this country, and yes, there are specific stressors to status, as you mentioned, but also there's an inherent drive, right? There's a drive to do better, to work harder, to achieve different things in a society that you're coming in at a status that's, maybe considered lower. So is that drive, is it parallel to the stress that you also have, or is it a way to positively shape that and use that inherent megalomaniac drive to be able to achieve that status, so you can kind of fit in and get above, other people who are maybe in this country. And America maybe is unique to that because it has those opportunities, unlike other places in the world. So I'm just curious about your opinion on that.
The answer is absolutely. You get to choose the path. I say in my book, there's nothing out there that stops you from doing, what you want. People, I don't want to say it this way, but hello?
Yeah, I lost you.
Okay. No one is going to stop you until it's too late. Nobody stopped Jeffrey Dahmer. He chose the path that he chose. Could have been epigenetic, could have been a transgenerational thing that happened earlier in his ancestry, but there he was in any case. But to answer your question, so you come into this country from anywhere, and people don't like to be competed with because it gives them an opportunity to lose to somebody else. So now the social pressure comes on, the prejudice comes out to stop you so that they don't get stopped themselves by you. But that's a choice that the immigrant makes to fight it off and win, control, dominate, and be right anyway, or get kicked to the curb and run over. That's a choice. And by the way, choice. Are you familiar with the double split, the double slit experiment in physics?
No.
That experiment gave me the insight as to how decisions that we make decohere the superposition of brain waves. You get to pick one. That's the one you act out in life. That's how I believe it happens. This is not just, something made up like, some Martian came about and, gave it to us or anything like that. We have that capability to decide. And that decision kind of thing was the thing that as 5 years old I made, not to be like my father when he punched me in my arm. I decided not to be like him. He was a type A personality, hostile, angry, driven. And I, not wanting to be like him, I practiced not being like him for the rest of my life. And so I turned out to be a type B personality. Now, if I turned out to be a type A, everybody could look at me and say, well, you inherited from your father. See?
So
that's not necessarily so. I made a decision not to be like him. That set my epigenetic material to shut down and turn on certain genes for type B personality.
So
It's not magic.
Are you saying that we have ultimately free will over our decision making and over our epigenetic expression, even though we may have some genetic predispositions? I'm similar to you, by the way. My dad was very physical with me, and what you would consider to be abusive in this way. And I made a decision, conscious decision, that I'm not going to do that with my daughter. However, can't say I'm not, I'm perfect all the time. I've, raised my voice here and there. I've definitely can see how I've also repeated certain things I didn't like that were done to me, but just, I did, which I'm not happy and proud of. But I do ultimately have free will when I made my decision. But I think some of that stuff, on being wrong, as you mentioned, kind of trickles in once in a while, and you have to kind of push it aside and recognize that it's happening.
You've heard of the neuroscientist Sapolsky?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let me talk about that after this. But for having this conversation, Len, and understanding the ramifications of this conversation, would you have, at the time you had your daughter, would you have treated her differently for having known what you know now? Then?
You mean from the way I was raised,
Well, you
or
said you didn't want to raise her a certain way.
yeah, I was clear. I didn't want to repeat what my father did with me. That I made a conscious decision.
But this conversation gives you a matrix of understanding not to be that way, which you didn't have, I don't know, let's say 20 years ago. And I say it would have made all the difference.
But you're saying when you were 5 years old, you made the decision that you didn't like what your father was doing to you. So you made a conscious decision, free will, to say, I'm going to go left instead of going right. And I'm going to consciously, create that type of lifestyle for myself because I didn't like that. I didn't make that same decision as you made until I actually, had a child. And that way, I made a decision that I didn't want to repeat that pattern, that generational trauma. And as I started unfolding through my own history, I started seeing a pattern. My father was getting the same thing from his mother or his father, and vice versa. And it kept going. So at some point, I need to break that cycle. And that was one of my goals.
Great.
Lost you again.
You there?
Yep, back.
Okay. It's all thought. Thoughts will produce biochemistry.
Yeah.
A thought wave will decohere, will lapse into a particle, which is what the dust experiment shows, and that biological particle will then be Okay. That thought will decohere into a particle which may wind up being a methyl group, which methylates DNA, causing it not to be able to produce what it's coded to produce, which means you might very well suppress a cancer suppressor gene due to the methylation of that gene that suppresses cancer. That gene will not make the chemical for the suppression of cancer. Guess what happens? You get cancer. And then you can go into remission. Now you can demethylate. But again, Len, if you don't know you have the capability of doing this, you're stuck. And you'll make up stories that it comes from outer space. Some cloud up there is throwing, darts at you and just happened to hit your genetic material. And then, well, you deserved it, or all sorts of stuff that people throw on you, to win control, dominate, and be right. By the way, it all comes from cave mentality. You'll notice how we treat each other is the same exact way we've treated each other from cave to cave 40,000 years ago. Yes. We have very little. In my book, I say we have traveled 40,000 years out of the cave, but only 5 feet from its entrance.
Yeah.
And it is so true if you just look at what's going on today.
Is the goal, or ultimate goal, I guess, to embrace your fetal tyrant? Is it to suppress it? Or is it to find a balance of how to utilize that inherent tyrant in you to be able to be, a positive member of society?
So, megalomania is a fire. How are you going to use that fire to survive the best you can in the culture that you grew up in? That's all it is. And look at the difference between Mother Teresa and Hitler. They both had a fire. They just chose different ways of expressing it. And they had no idea what they were doing. They had no idea it was a biochemical thing. But we as doctors know it. And now we can come back and say, you know what? You have to be much more mindful of your mindset, because you're creating stuff that does not exist until you make it exist with thoughts.
Interesting. But culture, I guess.
Yes,
we all have, because we all come from different cultures. Like if you come from North Korea, your cultural mindset about megalomania is completely different than it is in the US, or than it is in maybe in Russia, or maybe that's closer to that, or South Africa or something like that, during apartheid. So is there, how can we possibly judge different cultures and say they're wrong, we're right, and their culture is wrong? Because if you grow up in, there's a conflict in the Middle East, it's been going on for centuries, basically. And one side is saying you're right, one side is saying you're right, but culturally they're being validated. So we, as positive members of society, drew a line and say, well, maybe choking a baby to death is wrong. And another part of the society is saying, you know what? There's a reason why we do this, because we support that, and we validate that this is a way to be able to channel your megalomania to a positive thing, and our culture actually accepts that. So how do you justify what's being done in different cultures based on this suppression or balance of your internal fetal tyrant?
Imagine that every culture believes it is right. It has to believe it's right because it's made up of human beings, all of whom have the same human nature. I know people hate that, but it's the same human nature 3 times to win, control, dominate, and be right. when you understand that the clothes you wear, the political system that you have, means nothing because you're all human, that's the power I think I have in the book that says, look at each other, be able to discern whether or not what you believe is the truth for every single person on the planet, and that you can prove it scientifically. That's the definition of truth. Now,
Yeah.
if you can't do that, Len, you have an opinion, bias, prejudice, and a faith. Thanks for sharing. Tap on the shoulder. Goodbye. But if you want to be with me as a blank slate, understanding that you only believe what you believe because you were born into that cultural belief for which there is no truth, because cultures change. Truth does not change. Truth is immutable. Truth is permanent. Cultural beliefs are not. So if we don't get out of that, guess what, Len? We're going to go to war again for the same nonsense that we've gone to war all the time in the past. All due to cultural beliefs. Strip them, and now you're all the same human being with the same human nature to win, control, dominate, and be right. Let's help each other along the path of success so that we all benefit from your winning, controlling, dominating, and being right. You don't have to kill me for your winning, controlling, dominating, and being right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful theory. In practicality, not everybody believes in science. And what you said it really well, that if you look at the conflicts that have been, the global conflicts that have occurred, they occur, I believe, almost all of them, if not all of them, based on the difference of belief systems. But if the choice of a culture is not to believe in science, period, like science is not part of our culture. We believe in, an invisible man in the sky who's going to tell us what to do all the time. Then what can you do to, validate and justify and change those cultural beliefs if they're so ingrained?
A long time ago, I had this conversation with somebody in business, and he said that in order to change the world, enough people have to die off with preconceived ideas. That's a little harsh, but when you go to war, that's exactly what happens, isn't it? You kill off enough people. Look at World War II. You kill off enough people, you maintain your numbers of people, and the world goes on without the despots who have been defeated. Now, the interesting thing is, hidden in plain sight, those people who do not believe in science, they can't see. Do you know why? Because they themselves, biologically, chemistry, physically, are all science. And you can stick your head in the ground as deep as you want. You are still going to be science. You're still going to go to a doctor. You still drive around in a car, which is all engineering science. You're all the doctors who treat you for some sort of have to understand the chemistry of food poisoning and the bugs that cause it. And you're going to walk into the planet and say, you don't believe in science? I'm sorry. You don't believe, to be honest, if you don't believe in science, you don't deserve to be here because you're science yourself. You're science yourself. Your house is all science. Anyone who you love is all science. Love itself is the production of a scientific molecule called oxytocin. And you don't believe in science? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What more? What can you do with that?
I don't know. I think that's why we have certain conflicts in the world that are guided by, I don't know, superstition, I would say, for the lack of,
from the cave, Lynn, from the cave, dragged for 40,000 years, still superstitious. Do you know how many religions there are on this planet?
No idea.
You have any idea?
No.
In the vicinity of 10,000. Look it up.
I believe it. That's why it's always.
And I ask, how do you go from the void, the void of sperm and egg not even being united yet? How do you go from that void to 10,000 religions?
Well, so I have a theory on
No,
this.
no, 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 no. Answer that question. That's very important. How do you go from the void of being a nothing to a participant in one of the 10,000 religions? How?
So I have a theory on to answer your question on this is when people can't explain or choose not to explain certain things, they try to choose something that is outside of themselves. And because we're a culture of sheep, pretty much, we follow what somebody else has said and done. Oh, that must be an explanation for that, because we choose not to look at, science to explain these things. So we think that these are just, things that occur because of some sort of other force that we don't know or we can't tangibly see.
And that other force will allow you to kill people because they're wrong, you're right. Win, control, dominate, and be right.
There you go.
No truth from science. See, science is the only arbiter. Without science, you get to believe anything you want. And the proof of that is 10,000 religions. That's the proof that you can believe anything you want. Science says, sorry, we got to put the brakes on this 10,000 religions. Let's find the one true religion. And you know what? All 10,000 believe they are the true religion.
Exactly.
It all comes from winning, controlling, dominating, and being right, which is the human nature. The same human nature that exists in all 10,000 religions. This is such a clear picture as to what we are, Len.
Yeah.
And that's why I had to write this book.
When you wrote the book, Steve, was there anything that you uncovered, anything that even surprised you as you were writing this book that you didn't know?
Yeah. I have one thing at the very end of the book when I discuss what love is.
Yeah.
And are you more or less convinced that the human nature is about winning, controlling, dominating, and being right? Have I made a convincing case?
You made a convincing case, yes.
Okay. Can such a being who must win, control, dominate, and be right love?
Well, I mean, you already talked about oxytocin as a neurochemical.
Oh,
So
you. What kind of being who must win, control, dominate, and be right? Love.
well, you got to love yourself, right? To be able to get all those things that you want. You have to give yourself the love first. So you should be able to believe in love, at least for yourself. And if you can love yourself, you have the capability to share that with others.
All right. What is love? I have a definition for it. I redefined it.
I know. That's why I wanted you to talk about it.
Love is only exists if you get what you want. And anytime you see the unraveling of what you think is a love relationship, you will always see that one and or the other is getting what they want. Otherwise, they get divorced or they break the relation up. And interestingly enough, from an epigenetic point of view, in order to have a relationship with somebody, you have to produce oxytocin.
Yeah.
You only produce the oxytocin when you decide, here's your decision making, like I made with my father punching me, right? I don't want to be like him, like you did with your daughter. I don't want to be like that. I don't want this in my life. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn off mentally oxytocin. The opposite of that is that in order to fall in love with somebody, you have to be getting enough of what you want, which is all cultural in nature. You get enough of what you want over the course of the relationship, you turn on oxytocin. All very mental. But can a being who must win, control, dominate, and be right love?
Absolutely
No.
not.
Not
Absolutely not.
Not if love is based on getting what you want.
Well, so I'm going to give you a quick story, and maybe you can help me define this. So I was in Vegas, and I don't remember what I was doing at a show or something. I don't gamble, so when I go to Vegas, I'm the guy that sits at the bar, has a beer, talks to people, or has dinner or something like that. So I met this couple, and they were married for 40 years, and I liked the way they were bickering and going back and forth. I liked their energy. So we started talking. They own a business together too. And I asked them, like, what's your secret? Because I really felt they had love for each other. And like, we don't go to sleep mad at each other. Said, okay, great. I mean, I heard that before. Wonderful. Sure, I agree. Is there anything else? And the guy goes to me, Len, I got to tell you, every single morning when I wake up, I think, what can I do to make a contribution to her day to make her day better?
To give her what she wants.
And then the flip side of that is she said, I do the same thing. I think about what can I do to contribute to make his day better. So the question is, and I think you're sort of answering it already, because they're both willing to give to the other person that
They want what they want.
yeah,
Give the other person what they want.
they both win. And maybe a win-win is where you get that love and oxytocin exchange.
Only because you are allowing the other person to win, control, dominate, and be right in certain venues that they want to win, control, dominate, and be right in. And only when they get that will they continue to produce the oxytocin. If you don't continue to give them what they want, it comes across as a withdrawal of love. And that stops, little by little, the oxytocin flow and gives you the impetus for a divorce.
Yeah, I mean, I'm divorced, so I definitely concur and agree with some of that. But
So where is love? Can you love if you have to? You must give somebody what they want. Is getting what you want related to winning, controlling, dominating, and being right?
So are your kids?
Oh, you're gonna answer the question?
do you love your kids if they're not giving you what you want, if you're not winning and dominating?
What happens when they don't give you what you want? Do you get disappointed?
You still love them.
But that's a diminution of oxytocin.
Maybe. I don't know. I never measured the oxytocin. You're not always at a certain level of oxytocin throughout your day, but you're still mentally, if you think about your children, I hope you have this feeling of love that comes over you.
There are plenty of parents on this planet whose children do not turn out to be the way they wanted them to be, and they say something like, "Well, if you're not going to be like what I want, then I'm going to write you out of the will."
Oh, 100%. You're absolutely right.
Tell me how that's love.
I mean, not everybody possesses that same capacity, I think. I went to see a group last night, a singer, a musician. His name is Fantastic Negrito. And he told everybody this story. One of the things that inspired him is that at 12 years old, his dad turned on him, kicked him out, and if he would see him on the street in the same town, he would turn away and walk away from him. So he had to go in the foster system and all that stuff. So I'm like, well, that's crazy. And he had 12 or 15 kids, whatever it was. But this one kid, he pointed out, and he withdrew love from him for whatever he did or not. So it's definitely doable and possible because there are examples like that all over the world, for sure.
Yeah. The kids have to give the parents what they want in order to get love from the parents. And vice versa. If you don't get what you want, you don't exhibit love. You don't produce the oxytocin for the bonding with that person. And that's the whole idea of the dating game. You're out there checking someone out to see if you can get what you want from them. Over the course of the dating period, if you get what you want, you start to produce oxytocin. If you decide that the person is not going to give you what you want, you break up the relationship and immediately stop the oxytocin. Immediately. Yeah. Which just shows you the power of your mind over your biochemistry.
Makes sense.
You can stop it and start it anytime you want. But we got to go back to the same question. If you don't get what you want, will you produce the oxytocin to bond with somebody? Will you trade with somebody? Will you essentially say, if you give me what I want from you, will you give me what I want? Can we trade? Can we trade what we want?
That's what that's what I feel love really is. It's that trading back and forth.
Then you're missing the point. The point is words getting what you want.
Yes.
Don't get what you want. You don't fall in love. You break up the relationship if you don't get what you want. And that to me is a facet, a very big facet of the human nature to win, control, dominate, and be right, and surely comes from megalomania, from the fetus. I see it as a continuum. And it's there. It's existential in your life. I'm trying to prove it to you this way in having this conversation, and I do it in the book.
Yeah. No,
You can worm and twist all you want. By the way, if you disagree with me, are you proving me correct?
absolutely.
If you disagree with me, you're making me wrong.
I don't.
And you want to win, control, dominate, and be right. That is how insidious it is. You can't get away from it because it's an instinct to see the world that way.
Yeah,
And that is why everything is personal.
Yeah, I definitely can see it that way. I just think there's nuances. There's nuances of people who are so ingrained in relationships that they want to give to a relationship, and they are with a narcissist who also takes. So by giving, you're actually feeling good and you're getting that oxytocin, and that person takes and they're getting that what they need. So both people fulfill their needs, but it may not necessarily be this notion of being right and dominating, because they're all actually receiving something from the other person by being a giver.
That's the point. If you don't get it, you stop loving.
Yeah.
There's no way a narcissist is going to love you if you don't give what the narcissist wants.
Exactly.
And you, as the object of a narcissist, need something, want something that the narcissist is giving you, which is what you subconsciously need.
Yeah, it becomes a codependent relationship that is not.
Well, that's the biochemistry of epigenetics. Thoughts. And you develop that way from your childhood, from your culture, and people don't see it. And because of that, they're all codependent.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So, Steve, I have some questions that I ask all my guests, music related. We'll kind of shift the focus for a little bit, if you're open to that. If you recall, what was the very first concert that you attended?
Concert. Well, I guess the first one that I can remember was Tony Orlando and Dawn concert down here in South Florida in the new Coral Springs auditorium, I guess. That would be the first. I went to four. The most that I've ever gone to from the same person was Jackie Ivanko. Have you ever heard of her?
No, was that the last concert? Because that was my next question.
Well, the last concerts that I ever went to was the four of them, because I was so enamored with Jackie Ivanko, who came in second in America's Got Talent at 10 years old.
Got it.
A magical voice, a magical voice. If you ever get a chance to listen to her, do it. You must experience her voice at 10 years old. Even today, before you die, it's an experience. You'll see why when you listen to it.
Writing it down. So for the next year, you can only listen to 5 albums. And by the way, you don't have to mention the name of the album. It can be a Jack Avante album, whatever that is. So what would be those 5 albums?
I don't know. I don't listen to them. I am so involved with the marketing of my book because I'm doing podcasts.
Right.
That's funny. But, interestingly enough, if you want to talk about albums, a song that I like, a melody that I like is from Hans Zimmer, which is Tennessee Loop.
Lost you again.
Yeah, I'm back. Pearl Harbor, the movie. I like Enya. I've always liked her. I've always felt that she was ethereal, very that way. I liked Petula Clark when I was younger. I don't know. Is that answering your question? I used to play the bass fiddle for 7 years.
There you go.
I was in my high school sophomore, junior, and senior sing. If you're familiar with that, each class put on a musical, and we competed, against classes, sophomores against juniors, juniors against seniors. And I might say, my junior class was the only one to beat the class ahead of them twice. So as juniors, we won sing, even though there's an older group of seniors ahead of us. And then the next year as seniors, we won again. So I don't know if that means anything, but it was a good epigenetic event.
All right. So final question for you, Steve. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
How old?
You choose whatever room you want to describe.
Well, interestingly enough, my father was very much a fuss budget. He liked to consider himself a perfectionist, and he wanted his kids to keep their rooms the same way. We, of course, objected. We didn't like it. And so he put us through this thing where he would put a 3x5 card on the doors of our room and check off things that we had to do. I think that was a rebellion that occurred, again, not to be like him, never knowing, because I was beyond 5 years old when I had made the decision not to be like him. But ever since then, messy clutter room.
Did you have any artwork or anything distinctive on the wall?
No, not really. Some things attract me, but I don't, I haven't put them up.
Got it. Steve, where can people get your book? Where can they engage with you? Where can they find out more information?
If they want, should I give my personal email address? I don't know if that's appropriate.
You should share whatever you want to share, where people can find your book and how people can go, website or anything else, social media, wherever you want to.
Well, I'm on social media, but I really don't know how to work it. I'm working with a marketing group who's going to put that all together for me. Right now, we're writing blogs, so I'm editing those. But it's okay. My email address is miogen1, the number 1, at gmail.com. Myogen stands for Mind Over Genetics. That has been an understanding of mine forever, which is why when I first was introduced to the internet in the 1990s, I picked that because I had already been there, philosophically, Mind Over Genetics. Now I just get to prove it with epigenetics. And to get my book, if it's available through Amazon, they can go through my website, which is tamingthefetaltyrant.com. They can check me out a little bit more, and just click on the Amazon icon and go right to Amazon.
Cool. And for my audience, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for sticking with us. And I really appreciate all the wonderful reviews, all the stars and comments. So please keep them going, even if it's not 5 stars. Always looking to do better and improve. Thank you for buying my book, Making Cannabis Personal, and I really appreciate it. Steve, thank you so much for being on. It's a really fascinating conversation. I really enjoy the getting it into a little bit of a scientific challenge. So I think it's cool that you're doing this, because I think people need to understand that I absolutely agree with you. It's all about science, and if you can prove it, then it's true, and if you can't prove it, then it's not. So I'm with you on that.
Did we just discuss the last part that if most people do not know how to run a valid scientific experiment? And so I came with a new definition of it, which means this is a singularity. When you have it, there's only one of it. You have to be able to prove it. You there?
Yeah, I lost you again.
Okay. So you have to be able to prove it by way of the scientific method. And because most people do not know how to run a valid scientific experiment, the bottom line that everybody can use on this planet, which hopefully will unify us, would be answer the question. For every single thing you hear anybody say, including me, is what you're saying true for everybody on the planet? Because that is the bottom line of a valid scientific experiment. It has to be true for everybody. Like E equals MC squared, like water boils at 212, you know, all that kind of stuff in science. The car will run, you know, a certain way until it doesn't because the science of that particular car part breaks down. So that is the determining factor. If something is the truth, it must be true for every single person on the planet. If it's not, it's an opinion, bias, prejudice, and faith, and that ought to keep your epigenetic profile in check. So you don't go flying off into space with opinions, biases, prejudice, and faith, because now you know how to determine what's what.
Very good. Thank you so much for being on, Steve. Appreciate your time.
You want me again? I'm there for you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching and listening. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, share this episode, and hit that bell. Like, comment. I so appreciate that. And check me out on social under Len May or Len May DNA. Find out more on LinkedIn or lenmaycoaching.com. And remember, everything is personal.